Hey everybody, this is Lori. Welcome to Inclusivi-TEA podcast with the TEA. And during our podcast, we invite you to think about creating a sustainable future and think about what that means and how we can best do that and what you can do to make that happen. Our podcast partners are Alliance for Sustainability and Black Iowa News. And as always, we are so thankful to have them with us on this journey. And my co-host Leah and Dana are off today. And so this is just me. Usually I would have a guest sitting on one side of me, but today I am just talking myself. I was supposed to have my daughter on today. My daughter is a graduate student at the University of Washington in Seattle and teaches a class on basically understanding your own values and using those values to make decisions and decide how to live your life. So she is going to come on and talk about things that she's doing to help create a sustainable future. She has some interesting ideas and is a big forager. And I think there are lots of things we can talk about there. But she wanted a little more time to prepare. So instead of having her on, I'm going to talk a bit about the importance of trying to live your life while accepting and listening to other people's experiences. So I think it's very difficult for us to step into other people's shoes and actually take the time to understand what they're going through. I think it's easy to say, oh my gosh, that's terrible, and then move on with your day. And I think sometimes that's necessary. We have to live. And on Inclusivity podcast, as well as on our Facebook group, Inclusivity Collaborative, and our Facebook page, we talk a lot about the importance of figuring out what your needs are and taking care of yourself first. And in fact, last week, my guest was Lori Ellis Young, who is a breathing specialist, and talked with us about the importance of deep breath into your belly to help you center and relax and take care of yourself. And so this podcast isn't about not taking care of yourself. It's not about putting other people before taking care of yourself, but it really is about trying to understand what's really going on for other people, and with the goal of helping us know why it's important to create an equitable future, why it's necessary, and what the barriers might be. So I just want to walk us through a really simple exercise today, and just to have you perhaps step a little bit into someone else's perspective and see what they're going through. I really invite you to close your eyes to experience this. I really invite you to take some deep breaths and relax before we start. And then I'm basically going to tell you two stories, and they're the same basic story, the same location, the same base. I guess that's a good way to say it. The same base experience, but from two very different perspectives as to what it means to live in the United States, what it means to be a certain color in the United States, and what it means to experience the police in the United States. And this is one really simple example, but I'd also encourage you, as you go through this with me, and next time you come upon someone who's trans, or someone who asks you to call them they instead of he or she, someone who is Native American, who has a different experience, whatever that is for you, whoever that is, whatever that experience is, I invite you to stop, take a breath, and try for a moment to absorb what their experience might be like and to listen. I don't think we're very good at listening. And I think especially we're not very good at listening if something challenges our core belief or makes us feel like maybe we have privilege over someone else. I think it's hard for people to acknowledge that privilege extends across the border, across all areas if you're white, that there are some privileges you have just because of the color of your skin. And so I invite you to really listen to the story I'm telling, and to try to settle in, breathe, and let it be, rather than try to push it away and say, but that's not me, but I didn't make that happen, but. So that's what I encourage you to do as you listen to other people, as you imagine other people's experiences. Completely eliminate the word but, because it really does negate everything else. So if I say, oh, that is tragic, but I didn't cause it, what I'm saying is that really is tragic, but I don't have to deal with it. It's not my responsibility. It's not mine. And I think to create an equitable future, and a future where everyone thrives, frankly, a sustainable future that we can live through, I think we have to start actually breathing in and experiencing other people's lives, and accepting that, in fact, if that's happening to my neighbor, I am responsible for that. And again, not responsible for that at my own peril. If you are someone who takes in other people's pain so significantly that you can't function, that's not what I'm talking about. If you've experienced trauma, so these experiences are magnified for you, or bring up your own trauma, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is most of the audience, the white people in the audience who can do this and can take responsibility and can begin to work towards equity, begin to work towards justice, and at the very least, understand what someone else is experiencing. I think it's helpful, and I think it brings up more of our humanity, and I think it connects us. So here's the story. In the first story, the first scenario, you are and I'm going to close my eyes so that I can vision this as I'm talking about it. So take a deep breath and imagine that you're me. You're a white woman, or a white man, or a white non-gendered person driving in northern Minnesota. There are trees all around because it's a very wooded area. You're just driving down the highway. You have two children in the back, two white children in the back. And maybe you're singing along to a Raffi CD, or you're singing along to the radio, or you're listening to a book on tape. And you see a police officer across the divide, and in your rearview mirror, you see them turn around, get into your side of traffic, and turn their lights on. What's probably going to go through your head is, oh my gosh, what did I do? Do I have a tail light out? Am I speeding? You might look down and notice that you're going about 5 minutes over the speed limit, 5 miles over the speed limit. You might wonder, are they going after somebody else? And you might even expect they would pass you. But as the car gets closer, you pull over, and they pull up behind you and stop. You roll down your window. You say, kids, don't worry. This is, mommy must have been speeding, or daddy must have been speeding. So just relax, don't worry. The police officer comes up to your door. They're the same color you are. And they say, ma'am, do you know how fast you were going? At this point, you're anxious, a little anxious, because you know that it's embarrassing to be caught by the police, and it's always uncomfortable. You always feel a little guilty. So you say, officer, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What did I do? And the officer says, well, just so you know, you're going 5 miles over the speed limit. The officer probably at that point smiles at your kids, says hi. Your kids are just sitting in the back quietly. And you say, officer, I'm so sorry, I'll slow it down. And what he probably says is, okay, I'm not going to give you a ticket this time, but just keep it slower and have a good vacation. The officer goes and gets in his car. You say, oh my goodness, mommy needs to slow down or daddy needs to slow down. And you roll your window up and you keep driving. And you and your children immediately begin singing again. So that's scenario number one. That's what most of my friends, not all of my friends, but many of my friends, that would be their experience. That's certainly my experience if I get pulled over by the police. So experience number two, and the reason that I'm telling this particular story is that I have a friend who actually did experience this. For me, this story was a palpable and poignant reminder of the vast divide in the country and the need for really doing our work and trying to change things so that this doesn't happen. So now I want you to close your eyes again. Same beautiful picturesque drive here up north. You're driving through trees. It's beautiful, it's sunny. You're probably listening to some music, you're enjoying it. In this case, you are about a 75-year-old African-American man. You don't look 75, you look very young for your age, you're very strong. And in the back seat are two African-American youth. You actually run a program that takes African-American youth up to the Boundary Waters for an experience outside because you believe the Boundary Waters and this nature are transformative. And so you're offering these experiences to young men. So you have two young men, teenagers in your car with you. At this point, you're probably all laughing. Again, you may be singing to the radio, probably not Raffi, but something else. You're singing to the radio, you're relaxed, you're driving along. You look across the divide and you see a police officer you see a police officer drive by, you look in your rearview mirror and you see a police officer flip around, in the road in the median and come up behind you with their lights on. You take a deep breath and then you say to the boys in the back, police there's a siren, police car behind us. Remember what I told you to do. You immediately pull over. Your heart is racing. You roll down your window. You put your hands out of your window. The boys in the back seat put their hands out the window. You, being smart and understanding the situation, have put your ID as well as the IDs of the boys in a clear plastic bag that you have hooked to your door. So when you put your hands out the window, you drop your ID out the door. And you sit there like that. The police come up behind you. They sit in their car for a minute. They come up. There is no smile on their face. And they ask you what you're doing up here. And you explain, officer, I'm taking these young men to the Boundary Waters and we're just enjoying some nature. And the police officer says, well, let me have your license. You say it's right there out the door. The police officer looks at your license. You've done nothing wrong. You weren't speeding. You were very careful about your speed. And the officer grills you for a few more minutes. Again, your heart's beating. The boys in the back have not made a sound. The officer eventually says, okay, you can go, and goes back and gets in their car. You slowly pull your hands back in the car. You slowly pull your ID back in the car. You roll the window up. The boys pull their hands in the car and roll their windows up. And you sit there for a few minutes. And one of the boys actually says, I thought we were in trouble. I thought we could be hurt. And you in your head are thinking, I thought we could be killed. That there was a possibility that if I made a wrong move, that I would be shot simply for being here. And the boys in the back seat who laughed when you told them to put their hands out the window if the police arrived said, thank you. Thank you for telling us that. You can open your eyes. And one of the things I want you to recognize is that while I, the white woman, getting prepared for my trip with my kids up to the Boundary Waters, was packing snacks, goldfish and juice in a cooler, my friend, the African-American gentleman, was teaching these young boys what to do if the police came up to the car. While the police were behind me, I was thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to get a ticket. Ooh, this might cost me $50. I wonder if I was speeding or do I have a light out? You were thinking, my friend was thinking, I hope that I make it through this stop alive, and I hope that these young men in my back seat remain quiet. That's the same scenario, same location, same police officer. So what I want you to go away with today is not a feeling of helplessness, what can we do about this, but a feeling of, what can I do? What can I support? How can I listen better so that when I hear these stories, I feel them? And I feel the injustice not as an observer, not as someone who says, geez, that's too bad. I wish we weren't so racist. But who says, how can I vote? How can I support organizations? How can I listen? One of the things that you can do, and I kind of want to leave with this, is one of the things that you can do is provide space for those conversations, because I think they're uncomfortable. Well, I know they're uncomfortable, but because of that, I think what we often do is our African-American friends, our friends of color, don't tell us those stories because we don't want to hear them. We don't want to be fully present for those experiences because we don't know what to do. We feel at a loss. We feel like, oh, that's bad. I don't want to hear that. Let's talk instead about where we're going for ice cream. And what I want to encourage you to do is not to have always heavy conversations, because that is not a friendship, but to allow space for the people in your life who have experienced these kinds of biases, these kinds of hateful experiences, who have experienced the incredible inequity. Leave space in your life for those people, those friends, to tell those stories. Listen, open yourself up to the possibility that your experience of the world is based very much on where you were born and the color of your skin. And just listen. And I frankly think that that's probably one of the most important things you can do, and it's free. It's free and anybody can do it. What's interesting is that the gentleman whose story I was telling, I met with him originally. This is just a little bit of a story about listening. I met with him originally because a friend connected us. She felt that he could help with some financial things for my company, and is what she presented to me. What she presented to him is that I sometimes did fundraising for nonprofits. So we came into this from very different perspectives. And it was clear within about 5 minutes of sitting down to talk to each other that whatever we were looking for from that conversation, I wasn't at a place at that moment to raise funds for a nonprofit. He wasn't at a place to help me with financial stuff for my company. So it became very clear within the first 5 minutes that we were not going to be able to provide what we thought we were for each other. And there came a decision point for me, because I was really busy at the time, and I was trying to be open to hearing people, but I was also like, oh my gosh, I could go do some other things. And there came a decision point for me where I had to either say, well, it was really nice to meet you. I hope we get to meet again. I think that this isn't exactly what either of us needs. Thank you so much. Shake your hand and go. Or just sit and get to know this interesting person. And I chose to stay. And I heard not just this story, but I heard stories about how his grandparents were slaves. And I heard about his going down to the plantation where they were actually owned, that experience for him. And so it was a transformative experience for me because he shared those stories with me. And I think for him, it was meaningful because I heard those stories. And so again, I want to encourage you, if you are with non-white friends or non-binary friends or people from the LGBTQIA community, to just be open to hearing their stories. And that's the message from today. Listen to other people's stories and try to absorb what they're telling you. Don't be waiting to tell your counter story, or don't be paused waiting to speak again, but just sit and listen and absorb it. And then let's work on creating an equitable future together. Thank you so much for being here. This has been Inclusivity Podcast. I'm your host, Lori. My co-host, Dana and Leah, are off this week. I want to thank again Black Iowa News and Alliance for Sustainability for their support and collaboration in this project. And I encourage you to listen. Listen to nature when you're out in it. Listen to your family. Listen to your friends. Listen to the stories and experience them, feel them, and understand that if someone else could live them, you can listen to them. And that the only way for us to get through some of this trauma is to talk about it. Thank you so much. Like I said, soon I will have my daughter on to talk about how she chooses to live a more equitable life and really support justice. And we'll have other new guests coming up next week. Thanks.